Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parirajakacharya Stotrashat Sri Srimat. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Haribo, Haribo. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devam saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, and unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtaprayeshtapadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Now, wouldn't that be nice? Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagarna Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpite Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshri Vrishabhanu Sude Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpa Trubhischa Kripa Sinubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lungayate Giram Yakripatamahamam Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishram Hari Om Tat Sat. So we're in the wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam, and we've made our way all the way to, see, what is it? The fourth canto, creation of the fourth order. I believe that's Visarga in Sanskrit. There's the 12 topics of Bhagavatam, or 10 topics, right? And so creation, so isn't creation part of it? So this is secondary creation of the fourth order. Anyways, it's similar. Then we're in chapter 12. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. So amazing. And so there was an answer here to, well, let's get to the verse. Now we went all the way to, is it on there? You guys can see it? Verse 12. Yeah, I have it. Chapter 12, verse 20. Okay. So this one, I don't think it's the Brahma Samhita meter. It's like the na 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 na. Tatrano deva pravaro chaturbujo. Shamo Kshorava Runa Bhujakshano Stitavashtabhya Gadam Suvasaso Kirita Harangadacharo Kundalo Tatranu Deva Pravaro Chaturbujo Shamo Kshorava Runam Bhujakshano Stitvav Avashtabhya Gadam Suvasaso Kirita Harangadacharo Kundalo Tatranudeva Pravaro Chaturbujo Shamo Kshirva Varuna Bhujakshano Stitvavavashtabhya Gadam Suvasaso Kirita Harangadacharo Kundalo Tatranudeva Pravaro Chaturbujo Tatranudeva Pravaro Chaturbujo Shamo Ksharavaruna Bhujakshano Stitavavashtabhya Gadam Suvasaso Kirita Harangadacharo Kundalo Tatranudeva Pravaro Chaturbujo Ravavashtabhya Gadam Suvasaso Kirita Harangadachalo Kundalo Chaturudeva Pravaro Chaturbujo Shamo Kishoravarunam Bhujakshano Titavavashtabhya Gadam Suvasaso Kirita Harangadacharo Kundalo Tatranudeva Pravaro Chaturbujo Shamo Krishoravarnam Bhujakshano Titavavashtabhya Gadam Suvasaso Kirita Harangadacharo Kundalo Tatranudeva Pravaro Chaturbhujo Shamo Kishora Varunam Bhuje Kshano Sitava Vashtabhya Gardam Suvasaso Kirita Harangada Charo Kundalo Tatra there Anu then Deva Pravaro two very beautiful demigods Chatubhujho with 4 arms Shamo blackish Kishoro quite young Aruna reddish Ambuja lotus flower Ikshano with eyes Stitho situated Avashtabhya holding Gadam club Suvasaso with nice garments Kirita helmets Hada necklaces Angada bracelet Charu beautiful Kundalo with earrings. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Dhruva Maharaj saw 2 very beautiful associates of Lord Vishnu in the plain. They have 4 hands and blackish bodily luster. They were very youthful, and their eyes were just like reddish lotus flowers. They held clubs in their hand, and they are dressed in very attractive garments with helmets, and were decorated with necklace, bracelets, and earrings. Translation with repetition. Dhruva Maharaj saw 2 very beautiful associates of Lord Vishnu in the plain. They had 4 hands and a blackish bodily luster. They were very youthful, and their eyes were just like reddish lotus flowers. They held clubs in their hands, and they were dressed in very attractive garments with helmets and were decorated with necklaces, bracelets, and earrings. All right. Sometimes it's hard to paste these. Purport. The inhabitants of Vishnu Loka are of the same bodily feature as Lord Vishnu, and they also hold club, conch shell, lotus flower, and disc. In this verse it is distinctly stated that they had 4 hands and were nicely dressed. The description of their bodily decorations corresponds exactly to that of Vishnu. So, the 2 uncommon personalities who descended from the airplane came directly from Vishnu Loka, or the planet where Lord Vishnu lives. Tatranudeva pravaro chaturbhujo shamo kishora varunam bhujekshano stitava vashtabhya gadam suvasaso kirita haran gadacharu kundalo. I don't know about you guys, but I really like, learned this recently in Sanskrit when they're trying to say something that's like 2, it has the O, like AU syllable. And this verse is using that a lot. And it reminds me of one of the first verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which Govinda Dasi, they didn't have it translated at that point, but she was asking what verse they could learn. So Prabhupada taught them this verse. And now my brain isn't working, so I'm going to pull it up. You know the verse, Hadai? Yeah. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Godadai Pushpan Vanto Chito Sando Tumo Nudo. There's another verse that it just reminded me. It has lots of O's because Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are the Parama Karuna, Pahu Dwijana. They're the two beautiful brothers who have arisen on the horizon of Godadesh, like the sun and the moon simultaneously, to dissipate the darkness of ignorance, and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. And so they're arising on this world, dissipating the darkness of ignorance of our, complete ignorance of all different kinds. We don't know who we are, we don't know where we're supposed to go, therefore we don't know what we're supposed to do. So kindly Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda have come, they've showed us who we are. We're infinitesimal spirit sparks, and they showed us where we're supposed to go. We're supposed to go to serve Krishna with pure love. And how are we supposed to do that? By practicing. Of course, if we don't have pure love, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, then you can practice it. And if you don't know how to practice it, then at least you should surrender something to Krishna. And if you don't want to surrender to Krishna, at least don't be so selfish. If you have to be selfish, then try to gain knowledge. And so the greatest knowledge, though, of course, is this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam. This was the main Shastra for the Vaishnavas. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yat Vaishnavanam Priyam. So it's very dear to the Vaishnavas, and of course Lord Chaitanya and Gadadhar Pandit and all their associates were constantly relishing, especially a few different, like the Dhruva Charita, the glories of Dhruva Maharaj, which were sadly almost completed. So we'll have to read the whole Bhagavatam through, and maybe in about 10 years we'll be on there again, or I'm not sure exactly how long it'll take us to finish the Bhagavatam, but in this cycle of Bhagavatam classes, of course we can read it on our own. I remember Gopal Champu, he made a vrata. He was having a reading group with some friends, and they wanted to read Dhruva Charita 100 times and Prahlad Charita 100 times. So that's good. When I was doing a little reading for this verse, I was remembering a discussion, and I'm glad the two pundits are sitting here in this class. Oh, before I say any more, forgive my insolence. Almost all of you all are senior to me, except a few. But even those that aren't, I'm very happy that you've given me the opportunity to not have to preach to the four walls, and that I'm sure if I say anything out of line, Archita is ready to, use Shastra to correct me, as he so expertly always does, and I'm very appreciative. And of course, Sitaram knows a lot, and all of you all are very experienced scholars. And so, with that, I'd just like to discuss further the discussion that was had previously, that maybe Dhruva Maharaj was doing something wrong when he was killing all the yakshas, and that even Manu had to get involved. Lord Brahma got involved as well. Is that right? With Dhruva Maharaj killing all the yakshas, it was just Manu. But Manu came also, right? So they stopped him. There was some discussion, was it wrong, was it right? I can't remember if it was Jayadvaita Swami or someone was saying, well, if they're killed by the devotee, then that's similar to being killed by Krishna. Of course, everyone killed even in the presence of Krishna. We know he's equal. Sama sarveshu bhuteshu. He's equal to everyone. He's not giving anyone preferential treatment. But yetam mam prapajante, according to how you surrender to him, he'll reciprocate. He's reciprocal in his dealings, but he's equally reciprocal. Anyone can surrender him, and he'll reciprocate them. Like Lord Ram famously said, "Anyone that surrenders to me, then I'll protect him." And he even held up that promise when the close brother of his deathly enemy, Ravana, surrendered to him. And even if Ravana were to actually surrender to him, then he would keep that promise. So that's one explanation. And now we have this wonderful dialogue that's just been concluded between Kuvera and Dhruva Maharaj. And Kuvera called him sinless. He said, "You're sinless." And actually, he starts speaking very philosophically, which sometimes we have parts in the Bhagavatam which become very philosophical. It says that you're sinless and you're not the ultimate doer. Ultimately, it's eternal time. Krishna is the self-sufficient philosopher who's been fulfilling everyone's desires since time immemorial. But the problem with that is that here in the material world, everyone's desire is impure. So you have the wealthy man praying, "Oh, how can I protect my wealth and how can I get more wealth?" And then you have the thief hiding in the dark playing, "Okay, how can I steal this guy's wealth without getting caught?" And the Lord's sitting there, he's trying to fulfill everyone's desire and trying to decide which one he's going to fulfill more. Although they should understand, if they were really not in so much ignorance, if they had like the wonderful sun and moon of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda to shine in their heart and illuminate all the darkness of ignorance away, then they would know, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kinchanam jagatam tagat, that everything in the world, all the wealthy man's stuff and all the thief's cunning intelligence are owned and controlled and meted out by the Lord according to certain circumstances. So sometimes the thief will get his prayer answered and he'll make away with the money. And sometimes the wealthy man, his prayers are answered and the thief gets arrested. But ultimately, everyone is here in this material world disturbing everyone else due to conflicting desires. And this just turns into a never-ending stream of karma. Next life, maybe the thief becomes the wealthy man, and the wealthy man becomes the thief because he's always thinking of how to protect his money from the thief. But then that all changes, like Dhruva Maharaj's life changed. They also had different desires. He wanted to be the king, obviously. Who doesn't want to be the king? But trying to sit on the lap of his father, his stepmother was very nasty because she had her desire. She wanted her son to be on the throne. And so this universe is just like a big orchestra of everyone's different desires and conflicting, and it all has to be somehow orchestrated properly so everything is balanced. So the Lord is actually conducting this universe like a big orchestra, and everyone is actually playing their part perfectly. If someone's disturbing us, we shouldn't necessarily get retributive towards them. We should understand the bigger picture, like Kuvera is trying to show the bigger picture to Dhruva, saying that ultimately it's time, and Lord says, Kalos me, I am time, I am, the destroyer of all things. If someone's disturbing us, it's actually, they're just like a waiter bringing a dish that we ordered. Here, sir, exactly what you ordered. Although we don't know, due to our previous desires and our previous activities, this is exactly what we need. And if we can see everything in that way, then we won't be disturbed. And indeed, the Vaishnavas, their vision is Vaikuntha vision. Like Prabhupada said, his guru is a Vaikuntha man. And whatever would happen, nothing can disturb them internally. Of course, if someone comes to disturb the temple, we don't just sit there idly and do nothing about it. Or if someone's going to try to steal your wealth or something like that, you don't just sit there idly. You do what you can, but you understand that everything is ultimately up to the will of the Lord. That's one thing the Lord is telling Arjuna. You should do your duty. You're a kshatriya. You're on the battlefield. You want to get all philosophical and become a renunciate in the forest. That's not exactly the time, and you wouldn't be able to do that anyways. you'll feel so embarrassed, and your nature as a kshatriya, you'll eventually go back to that nature. You can't escape your nature. So rather, you should just act on your nature. You're already on this battlefield, you have to fight, and realize that actually it's all being orchestrated by me. And guess what? I'm telling you that it's already finished. They're already all dead. And there's nothing if you don't fight, they're all still going to die. If you do fight, they're all going to die, but then you'll get the proper credit. Plus, that's what I want you to do. So if you're fully surrendered, then you should do that. And so after the whole 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's understanding everything. He picks up his bow again, and he's ready to go. And so the whole point of this whole orchestration of the whole universe is to get every living entity to the point where Dhruva Maharaj is now, that we're hearing about. He and Kuvera were having this wonderful Vaishnava exchange. Mat chitta mat kata prana bodhiyantas parasparam katayantas tamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. That devotees, when they get together, they always love enlightening one another about Krishna. And in doing so, in sharing that Krishna kata, tushanti ramanti, they feel satisfied and very blissful. There's no bliss like proper Krishna kata. And I think that's why we all know, that's why we changed the course of our lives and are trying to engage in devotional service in the temple, and are trying to follow this process, because we've experienced a taste of it. We've probably also experienced a taste of what it is to be outside in the material world. So the key to increasing that taste, the key to our living in the temple, the key to everything in our life that we want to get to a similar situation of Dhruva, where our life is ending and we're going back to Godhead, is association. That's going to be the key from the beginning of our devotional life. Maybe we met a devotee, maybe we got a book, maybe some very exalted soul just looked at us and thought and made a prayer to Krishna, please help this person. Maybe we got some prasadam. But whatever we did, it wasn't because of us. It was because of some devotee gave their association in some way to us. Even being able to know the name Srimad Bhagavatam, to know the name Nityananda Sahodito, Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya, even able to know that verse was all from the mercy of all the Vaishnava Acharyas, all the way back to Narad Muni himself. Narad Muni told Dhruva, he's also telling us, because all of his servants are just Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, Chitete Korya Ash, that whatever they're saying is non-different from the words of their guru. That's all. The perfect Vaishnav is just the perfect, actually they're better than the perfect via medium. If there was just a long tube and there's a bunch of things of glass in the long tube and you wanted to see something at the end, Narad Muni's at the end and we're on the other end. If each tube is just simply glass, and maybe it's kind of, you can't see that far down, especially where it's like a mile-long piece of tube. But if each piece of glass representing the different disciplic succession is like a lens, it actually helps you see further. So what Narad Muni is trying to say, it comes further. The message of the Acharyas is very deep and very hard to understand sometimes for some people. But due to the parampara, like it said, the Bhagavatam was made sweeter by coming from the lips of Shukadev Goswami, by coming from the lips of Sutta Goswami, by going through all the different Goswamis, Sri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath, Sri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasa Raghunath, coming down through all our Acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur, all the way to who we see on our altar, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, Srila Bhaktisanta Saraswati Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada, and continuing down till it reached our ears through their disciples, then we can actually hear the message and we can actually understand it. Prabhupada translated into English. If it was left in archaic Sanskrit with no explanations, even though Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came and revolutionized India, none of us most likely would have heard very much about it. So Bhagavatam is full of these pure interactions between these pure devotees. Dadati prati granati guhyam akiti prititi bhungte bodhayate chaiva sadvidam priti lakshanam. And we're taught that if we try to act just like we see these pure Vaishnavas acting, then we will, it said that the ornament of a Vaishnava is his Vaishnava etiquette, then we will actually continue to grow in our Vaishnava qualities and Vaishnavata and become devotees ourselves. Prabhupada says in the purport, in this narration, there's nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in where the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus, the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and a young girl take pleasure in association. And even the Bhagavatam is being poetic, Prabhupada's being poetic there, but actually Krishna says later in the Bhagavatam, in the Uddhava Gita, that the so-called pleasure that a young boy and a young girl take in the association, chasing after sex life, is actually one of the most suffering pains. Whereas the Bhagavatam is completely enlightening and completely relishing on an unlimited, ever-increasing degree, anandam buddhi vardhanam. So it's a pale false comparison. But it's, for those of us that are on the material platform, it's good for us to hear that, because that's the only thing we have to compare, the bliss of these lower things. So if we hear about a higher thing, we can get a higher taste. So when any relation that we have, any interaction, we're always, with any devotee or any other person, it always also deals with the Lord, because the Lord is there. And that's what we learn. So that's one reason why we're all called das or dasi. We're all servants, because we've all accepted our position and our relation with the Lord. And we're trying to pursue it more and more. And so Dhruva was junior to Kuvera, and in their Guhyam Akati Prichati, Kuvera was explaining to Dhruva Maharaj. And Dhruva Maharaj was then asking for a benediction. So this is proper. And generally, we have different relationships. There's juniors, there's equals, and there's seniors. And in mundane, low material consciousness, if it's someone comes that's junior to you, you're going to want to lord it over them. Oh, finally, I can push someone around and tell them what to do. And if someone who's equal, you're going to be quarreling with them. And if someone who is senior to you, you're going to despise having to kowtow to them and you know grit your teeth. When am I going to be this senior person? But devotees, they have this Vaikuntha attitude, Vaikuntha consciousness. Vaikuntha means no disturbance, no difficulties. And so the juniors always respect the seniors always receive affection and blessing from the juniors always receive affection and blessing from the seniors. Like here, Kuvera is giving affection and blessing to Dhruva. He's so happy to see Dhruva. And so if we want to go back to Godhead like Dhruva is going back to Godhead, then we have to uplift our consciousness and try to always be in this Vaikuntha or Vrindavan attitude. Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan is the highest epitome, it's the summum bonum of all the Vaikuntha attitudes. And Prabhupada explains in a letter, in the Vaikuntha attitude, in Vaikuntha planets, factually there's no fault in anyone, but there's another kind of competition. Where in the material world, there's always a competition to see who can point out whose faults sooner. But the competition is that one devotee thinks of other devotees, how nicely they're serving the Lord. In the material world, the attitude is that everyone likes to think that I'm doing better than others. This is material conception. In the spiritual sky, it's just the opposite. Everyone thinks that my contemporary devotees are doing better than me. And so we are trained to address God brothers as Prabhu, which means master. This means we should always try to find out the serving side of our God brothers. Sometimes there are misgivings, but we should try to overlook. So here Prabhupada's trying to train his disciples in this Vaikuntha attitude. The attitude that will be of all our associates when we're actually back home, back to Godhead. So it means if we don't have this attitude, then we're not ready to go back to Godhead. And so it's a very important part. And if we do have this attitude, then it'll be a Vaikuntha back to Godhead atmosphere anyways, even if we aren't technically there yet. So it's this wonderful thing to cultivate. That, we consider everyone as Prabhus, as our worshipful masters. And not that because everyone's calling everyone else Prabhu, they're all calling me Prabhu as well, therefore I'm the master. That's Prabhupada didn't want someone to think like that. But he wanted them to try to see what is the worshipful qualities in this individual. And everyone has something. So we should always be able to pick that out. In terms of relationships, they says every person should act like this. When they meet a person more qualified, they should be very happy. Why should they be happy? Because this is someone that I can serve that can actually give me great blessings, give me great more knowledge, because they're more senior than me, and I can help take care of my problems. Then when they meet someone less qualified, they should be compassionate. Here's someone who is a very wonderful person, and very soon they could be more senior than me, but somehow they're in a problem that I was recently in, and maybe I can also help them solve their problem. And then that way they are compassionate towards them. And then when they see someone that's equal, okay, here's someone that I should make friends with. So someone in Vaikuntha consciousness, they're completely opposed to someone in material consciousness. Prabhupada says generally, like I was saying, when we find someone more qualified, we become envious. And when we find someone less qualified, we deride them. Good, what are you doing? And then when we find someone equal, we become very proud of everything that we're doing. But all of these will ultimately cause so many material tribulations. How many fights were started over some sort of false superiority? How many problems were caused by that? Unlimited. This material world is just an unlimited ocean of tears cried by those people that have fallen into these problems. So therefore, Narada is recommending to Dhruva and to all of us that this is how we should act perfectly. Instead of being more envious, of a more qualified person, we should be happy. Instead of being oppressive to the less qualified, we should be compassionate. And instead of being proud of one's, oh, I did this and this and this, what did you do? To an equal, one should treat them as a friend. And in general, they should have compassion for all people who are suffering because they don't yet have the fortune of having the sun and the moon of Nitai Sachi Sutta arise in their hearts, dissipating the darkness of ignorance. They don't know who they are or what they're supposed to do or where they're supposed to go. So if we follow these functions, then we'll actually become happy. It's said the best way to control one's mind is to always engage it in thinking of the welfare of others. And when we have a controlled mind, Krishna says the super soul is already reached. So that's why we're always thinking, not only in Vaikuntha attitude, but in Sankirtan attitude of how to always spread the glories of Krishna. Because the glories of Krishna are ultimately the sun that will dissipate all this darkness. When someone understands the glories of Krishna, then they can understand Krishna's position and their position in relation. And so the more we can connect others with Krishna, that's the real way to do compassion to them. And when they actually get connected with Krishna, they'll realize their position, and they'll realize what to do and where they need to go. And of course, there's many of those that are not ready for that knowledge, and the expert devotee should be able to gauge that and know how to disengage their energy and neglect those who aren't ready. We should pick the ripe fruits, and there's mercy that we can give to everyone, even the most insidious, dark, hateful seemingly person towards us. We can still give them Krishna's mercy in different ways. I mean, just look at behind us where, Hadai and Michael are making all these cookies. You can trick them by giving them a cookie prasadam. They may not know what it is, but if it's made with the right consciousness, each of these are like, if you had the right eyes to see, they'd be like shining with so much beautiful Krishna conscious energy. Someone eats that, and it goes and it illuminates the darkness of that person's consciousness. We had the eyes to see that. Fortunately, Shastra gives us the eyes to see it in some way. And generally speaking, most things in Shastra we don't really get to see with our eyes until we're very advanced. But we don't have to see with our eyes. We can see with our ears. That's the first thing that gets awakened. When you want to try to wake up, you put an alarm. The first sense that awakens is the ears. That's why we always engage in kirtan of Krishna and Harinam Sankirtan, kirtan of his names. And so even if someone doesn't like us, even if they go and they try to close their head and close their ears and don't want to listen to it, it doesn't really matter. It's going to have some effect, and the more powerful the devotees are chanting, the more powerful that effect is going to be. And one day or another, he's going to forget about the devotees, but Krishna won't forget about the person. And so, if we ultimately want to be in a similar situation as Dhruva Maharaj, then we should train our minds to always be in Sankirtan Samadhi, that no matter what we're doing is just for the benefit of others and trying to elevate our compassionate mood. And in that, if we see a senior devotee, we should understand that this is someone I can get, like Kana Gopal just got back from associating with so many senior devotees, including his Guru Maharaj. I'm sure there's so many tidbits of nectar that were just flowing that he could hardly eat it all, but he was just trying to eat as much as he could, and now he can barely walk because he's so full with transcendental knowledge. Now someone just like pokes him and he'll like barf it out like immediately. And so now all the people in New York, they won't stand a chance. And so if we see an equal person, then we can engage in just telling them something about Krishna. And if we see someone that's less fortunate than we are, we can somehow engage them. And if we see someone in general, we can somehow engage them. And if our mind is always thinking just how to do welfare to others, then it'll always be thinking of these great qualities, and our mind will be completely in samadhi. And eventually it'll come the day when our body fails us, and the Lord will remember all that we did through our entire life. And because we were such good association to everyone else, the Lord will be intoxicated to have our association. And in that, the Lord will want us to going back to Godhead. And so then, just like Dhruva Maharaj, everything will be arranged. And even in this life, if we have that consciousness, even before that wonderful moment, we'll already be in connection with the Lord. We'll already be experiencing so much bliss that whatever kind of bliss that the people think they're experiencing in the material world will just seem like a vague dark shadow. And so, Tatranu deva prafaro chatur bujo shamo kishara varnam buje ksherno stitava vashtabhya gadam suvasaso Kirita Harangada Charo Churu Kundalo. Yeah, then we'll eventually, now we're hearing about it, but eventually we'll see the transcendental form of the Lord who has reddish eyes, with wonderful suvasa, so dressed with, Krishna is known as suvas. Vas means clothes, and su means very good. He's a very good dresser with wonderful garments. And so many wonderful ornaments, like we were just singing about his earrings swinging, shark-shaped earrings swinging to and fro. And for the whole month of Kartik, we were meditating on Krishna's little form. Why are they shaking to and fro? Because he's running from his mother. And so I've rambled on enough, and I think there's hopefully some wonderful thoughts and statements bubbling in the minds of you all devotees that you could continue this discussion. And we have a few minutes, so we can either end early or keep going.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the nice and inspiring class. Just a question. Why do we see that when devotees pass away now, because in the Bhagavatam multiple times the airplane comes down and the servants of Vaikuntha come, and like it came for Dhruva, it came for Ajamil. So why is it that we don't see that now, that the airplane coming and the servants of Vaikuntha taking the devotee back to Godhead?
There's a couple of reasons that come to my mind. One is, who's saying that that's not happening? I mean, there's so many things that we're not seeing. So, like I said with the Prashadam, the more in tune, the more advanced one gets, the more one can see all these things with their own eyes. Like Prabhupada was doing kirtan, and then he just shifted the kirtan to Narada Muni, Bhaja Avina, Radhika Ramana, and everyone was wondering what, and I believe it was in Mother Yamuna's biography she wrote, or that her friend wrote. And in there, they remember this whole wave of bliss. Like the kirtan was just incredible. And at the end, they asked, and Prabhupada was telling them, oh, you didn't see? And Narada Muni was there. Lord Brahma was there. Something like that. I can't remember exactly the situation. But none of the devotees could see because they weren't as advanced as Prabhupada. But Prabhupada, of course, Prabhupada's as advanced as you could be. It doesn't get more advanced than Prabhupada. If you think someone's more advanced than Prabhupada, then your knowledge is not very advanced. And so, is it possible that the Vaikuntha Dutas or the Goloka Dutas could snatch someone's consciousness and have no one notice? Yeah, definitely possible. Although, if people are a little in tune with the subtle nature of things, there's definitely so much evidence that when devotees pass, things are happening. Even they talked about George Harrison passing, and everyone felt a enlightening presence in the room. And everything felt amazing. They didn't see anything. Even Mother Sachi and what's the name of Lord Chaitanya's father? Jagannath Mishra. All the demigods were coming and offering garlands and offering all these things, but they just heard the jingling of their bells. They couldn't actually see them. So if someone is spiritually potent, they've already mastered all the mystic powers. So it's if you're not a master of mystic powers, how are you going to possibly see that? And if someone has more mystic powers than you, they can override yours and you won't see them. So if the demigods can do that, what to speak of the perfect devotees that would be coming and getting them? So it's not to say that it isn't happening. And certainly when certain devotees are going, there's definitely some evidence that something is happening. So I don't think it would be a point to lose faith on. But what do the esteemed Vaishnavas in the room have to tack on to my answer?
Hare Krishna. I'm no esteemed Vaishnav, but
Can you just pull it a little way because
no,
it's
yes, I'm no esteemed Vaishnav, but I did have a comment, and it ties into Hadai Pran Prabhu's question that I was reading Chant More by Shivaram Swami Maharaj, and on the last page it describes the passing of, her name wasn't mentioned, but the mother of the Mayapuris, the music group, and how she was on her deathbed in Sridham Mayapur and suddenly started trembling, and her husband was there, and then she suddenly stopped, and he was inquiring from her what happened. She said, Krishna came, and he asked me to dance with him, but I rejected. Like I said, no, like not yet. And then maybe a few weeks or days later, I can't remember, it says, the same instance happened. She was just alone with her husband, and she started trembling, and then she started profusely crying. And he said, is it Krishna again? Because he couldn't see what was happening. But she was near death and having this transcendental experience, and she said, this time Srimati Radharani came, and she said, you can reject Krishna, but you can't reject me. And then she shortly left her body after that experience. So there's many instances, and even devotees recounting their experiences of seeing some transcendental airplane or transcendental vision. There's also, I was just in the airport, I was listening to Ananga Manjari Devi Dasi's Prabhupada Memories, and she gives an account where she was taking care of Prabhupada's sister, who was also on her deathbed, very sick at that time, maybe in Vrindavan, and she was at Prabhupada's, it was either Vrindavan or Mayapur, she was chanting around Prabhupada's samadhi and just begging Prabhupada, please take her back home, like end her suffering, because she was just, Prabhupada's sister was suffering so much at the end. And the last few days, she was barely responsive, but whenever Ananga Manjari Mataji would ask her, Prabhupada Vani, she would go, and she would make like an agreement sound to turn on Prabhupada's voice on audio. And basically when she left her body, it was very conducive. The devotees were all there chanting. And Ananga Manjari Mataji, because she was serving her so intimately, she received this mercy of seeing this transcendental vision where she actually saw Srila Prabhupada come and take her kind of subtle body that came out of her gross body, and they kind of went into the distance, and then they looked back at her, and kind of Srila Prabhupada made this like gesture, like, you're all coming with. And Prabhupada gives this guarantee that, if you go on distributing books your entire life, Lord Chaitanya will come himself and take you back to Godhead at the time of your death. So there's all these things, and as it relates to like going on Harinam Sankirtan and preaching too, I was thinking how seeing all as more qualified than us actually, and in giving pleasure to Krishna. and how that's Srimati Radharani's mood. She's always thinking that everybody else
Yeah.
brings more pleasure to Krishna. And that's almost what we're doing when we're going out preaching. We're trying to bring more pleasure to Krishna by getting others into his service. So those were just some thoughts I had. Thank you for the nice class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Is there another question? Well, it's already 9 o'clock. It's 9:01, so we're going to have to continue the discussion at breakfast prasadam. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.